Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. We are honoured to acknowledge Mr. Heng Ki Chan, Permanent Secretary of Defence, Singapore, accompanied by Mr. David Lewis, Assistant Secretary, Southeast Asia Department of Defence, and the accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Patrick's Catholic Primary School from Kogarah, New South Wales. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private John Edward Rodoreda. John Rodoreda was born in Perth on the 14th of September 1898, the son of land agent Edward Rodoreda and his wife Julia. He received his education at the Christian Brothers College in Fremantle, where he was a prominent member of their rowing club. Rodoreda volunteered in the Royal Life Saving Society and was a member of the Senior Cadets. At the outbreak of war in 1914, he was living with his family in Windsor, employed as a clerk. Rodoreda enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 30th of April 1917, at the age of 18. Joining the Australian Army Medical Corps, he trained at the Broadmeadows camp before being assigned to the 13th Field Ambulance. He embarked from Melbourne on board the troop ship Ulysses in December. Private Rodoreda arrived in Egypt in January of 1918, where he spent time training with his fellow recruits. In February, he sailed for England and on arrival fell ill with diphtheria, resulting in a lengthy stay in hospital. Once recovered, Rodoreda spent more time training in Salisbury before heading to France to join his unit in November of 1918. By the time Rodoreda had joined his unit, the armistice had been declared. Not yet demobilised, he proceeded to Belgium, where his unit was engaged in treating the civilian population for illnesses including the early cases of the 1918 influenza pandemic. Rodoreda was stationed in the Belgian city of Dinant for the remainder of 1918, where his unit celebrated Christmas with an issue of rum and pudding. The new year saw Rodoreda and his unit remain in Belgium as the process of repatriating soldiers to Australia was underway. As January progressed, cases of the flu began to soar globally. The first recorded cases occurred in United States recruitment camps in early 1918, where soldiers were preparing for deployment to the front. By 1919, more than 500 million people were infected. The virus not only affected the old and vulnerable, but had high mortality rates in those of good health in their 20s, 30s and 40s. The disease caused fevers, shortness of breath, hemorrhaging, vomiting and pneumonia, killing an estimated 50 million people worldwide. The mobilisation and sudden demobilisation of troops due to the war quickly contributed to the spread of the virus with deadly consequences. With no vaccine or pharmaceutical interventions available, quarantine, isolation and enforced hygiene standards became the only way to slow the spread. In early February 1919, Rodoreda applied for repatriation to Australia, but was denied. He was instead detailed to England to work in an administrative position at AIF headquarters in London until his demobilisation could be approved. 3 days after being posted to headquarters, Private Rodoreda contracted flu. He was admitted to Endell Street Hospital in London in a serious condition, suffering from breathing difficulties which caused his skin to turn blue. Pneumonia and delirium set in, and his condition worsened rapidly. Within days of admission to hospital, on the 28th of February 1919, Rodoreda died. He was 20 years old. John Rodoreda was buried at Brookwood Military Cemetery with full military honours. The West Australian Record reported the young private's death. It is sad to learn that having escaped all the horrors of war, this promising young Westralian should be stricken down with the dreadful plague. May his soul rest in peace. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Edward Rodoreda, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.